What up, everybody? Welcome to Trailer Park, the movie review show that focuses on the trailers of the movies. I am your host, Richard Barlow, and today we have some movies to talk about, and of course a trailer to talk about. We're going to be looking at a few kids' movies today. So for the trailer, we are going to talk about the new reimagining of Roald Dahl's classic, The Witches. And then we're going to be talking about the movie Scoob, the trailer I reviewed last season, and now we are going to talk about the film. Let's just hop right into it. Let's start with the first movie, the trailer for The Witches.
You'll be comfy here in your mama's old room. I'd do anything for her to be here right now.
Grandma was a tough lady with a big heart. And little by little, she brought me out of my sadness.
Now if you feel that you can't go on, darling,
I didn't know it, but there was a dark shadow looming nearby.
Okay, so The Witches, the original movie I loved as a kid. It freaked me out, and I think it did for a lot of kids. The witches in it were terrifying. The way they looked, the practical effects that were used in the movie, it was just really scary for a child and for a children's movie. So I did really like it. I am interested to see how this reimagining, this reboot goes and what they do with it. I think movies like this can lend themselves, children's classics. I think you can keep remaking them, and it doesn't take away from what the original was. If you love the original, you can still watch that. And then this one, maybe it will be better, maybe it will be worse, maybe it'll be on par. But as long as it gives just a few new things, then I think it's all right to reboot things like this. So I am excited to see it. I like the cast in it. I like, obviously Rowan Atkinson in the first one. I loved him. Anything he does, I absolutely love. But Stanley Tucci replacing him, another actor that I absolutely adore. So I don't mind seeing that at all. And for the rest of the cast, we had Angelica Houston in the first one, and she was great. But I'm not really attached to any of the actors in the first one enough to be upset with any recastings or think that they're the only ones that could do that part. And this cast looks pretty great. We have Chris Rock narrating it, and it sounds like he's one of the mice. I'm not sure. I don't remember the story enough to be able to pinpoint exactly who he might be playing. And there's Octavia Spencer is the grandma, so I think she's great. Anne Hathaway as the main witch. Anne Hathaway I find pretty hit or miss. I do like her for the most part, and I don't know that there's ever been a role of hers that I'm absolutely no, I don't like this. But she does, she's an actress that I find sometimes it is obvious when she is acting. And she really, not that I have a problem with someone who goes for it, actors should go for it. But, there are just sometimes she makes choices, and I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. And so I'm not against seeing her in this. I know there will be some people who are. I know some people love her, some people hate her. I'm actually kind of right in the middle. I don't mind her, but sometimes she's iffy on some of the parts she plays. So I am definitely interested to see what she does with this. And I don't think she'll be bad by any means. I just, we'll see what kind of choices she makes with this role.
Witches. They're real, and they hate children.
Welcome.
The thing I am most worried about with this reimagining is, like everything nowadays, it looks like they're heavily relying on CGI for the witches, for the mice, and stuff like that. And, I don't mind, I wouldn't mind the mice being like that, because, yes, I did like the puppet style in the original, but, to have CG mice, I don't mind that at all. The thing where I'm worried about it is in the witches and in their transformations and in their, in their faces and stuff like that. Just because the original, with the practical effects they used, like I said, that was terrifying. And I love that it was terrifying. Did it give a lot of kids nightmares? Probably. I'm sure it gave me some. But I don't, that doesn't matter to me. They're witches, they're meant to be terrifying. In this world, they're meant to be these evil, evil people who want to destroy children, and they're meant to strike fear in the children and just be this nightmarish group of people. And the original did that so well. Like the reveal of the witches, they were absolutely terrifying. And I loved that about the original. And I'm worried that in this reimagining, they're going to rely too heavily on CGI, and the witches are going to come off almost cartoony, which won't be scary. It was a problem that I had last season when I talked about It Chapter 2. There were a lot of Pennywise's transformations and stuff like that that looked just a little too cartoony to be scary. And I know we don't want to go too scary because this is a children's movie, but the original went there, and there are children that loved it. So, I don't want, if we're going to make kind of like a children horror thing, and there are these creatures that are meant to scare children, then why should we pull our punches and make them look cartoony so they're not too scary for children? They're meant to be scary to children. Now, I don't want to sit here and be like, let's terrify these kids. But, the original did it, and I don't think there was anything wrong with that. And like I said, it's a classic, and there are children who love it. So I don't think we need to pull punches. So I am worried that it's going to look a little too cartoony on the witches. There is a shot of Anne Hathaway smiling with her big wide mouth and the teeth, and it looks a little bit like the Cheshire Cat. And so that I have a bit of a problem with, like, just because I wish more than not Hollywood would still use practical effects, and they just kind of don't like to do that anymore. So I want to see practical effects used in these witches. I don't think they're going to. I think these are going to be very CGI heavy witches, with little to no practical effects, and I think that's a shame. Hopefully I'm wrong, and that they do have some practical effects in there and some makeup and costuming and stuff that make these witches look real. Because, there is that suspension of disbelief, and I find when Hollywood relies too much on CGI and everything looks cartoony, we don't believe it's real. Whereas part of what was so scary about these witches back in the original is because it was practical effects, it did look real. You could convince the audience that this was really happening because of the practical effects. I think they aged pretty all right. Some of the transformations, not so much. So, like, there are things that even in the original make it seem like it's not real. But those are the kind of things that I think CGI can fix up. I think we should start relying more on practical effects again and cleaning them up with CGI. Old movies that use practical effects. Look at, An American Werewolf in London, and movies like that where the transformations are like, ooh, this is fake. That's a prosthetic. That's not a real person. Times like that, if we could mix that stuff and clean it up with CGI, then that's when things start to look really, really real, and that would be amazing for films. But unfortunately, Hollywood seems to be relying too much on CGI, so we don't quite get that as often as I think we should.
I feared this was happening. Then here, that means a test is coming.
Ladies, I have a plan. Andro, to transform a child into a mouse.
Whoa! Why are we mouses?
Mice.
Whatever!
Other than my CGI issues, I do think that this looks like a pretty solid film. I am excited to see it. I like classics being reimagined. I always like to see a new director's take on it, with different actors taking on the roles and seeing what they make with it. It does look like they're changing this one enough. The old one was a British cast. This one looks primarily American. So, this is going to be a different version while still being the same. So I'm interested in seeing that. And I am also excited that this isn't coming to theaters. It's coming to home. Theaters are still iffy. They are open, but some people aren't comfortable going, which is totally understandable. So I like that movies are being released at home. I kind of wish more would be. There are still a lot of movies getting delayed. But this one is coming to streaming services, and I think it might even be out probably by the time this episode releases. So I'm going to check that out and get the film review to you as soon as I can. But I am excited to see this one. I'm very interested to see what they do with it. So like everything, we're gonna have to wait and see. But definitely interested to see this. Just to hope that the CGI doesn't take me out of it too much.
You wouldn't happen to be carrying around a mouse on your person, now would you?
A mouse?
Mm-hmm.
Why on earth would I be carrying around a mouse?